एक एक को बेस पसंद है
Hi, this is Asim.
This is Sujoy.
This is Amrita.
And you're listening to Khandaan, a Bollywood podcast about the three main Khans of the Hindi film industry.
Amir,
Salman,
And Shara.
Welcome back to episode 102. We're doing things slightly different now. We're going to be doing 10 special episodes. If you haven't followed the previous episodes and you have not watched Amrita's amazing reels on the Khandaan Instagram page, which you should follow if you're not following yet. But we're doing a 10 episode series of not the main Khan. So not Salman, Amir and Shahrukh.
I can't.
I've also lost my bearings completely because I don't even know how to function in this new world anymore.
Yeah.
What is life? What is podcasting if it's not about the main three Khans? So we've picked 10 Khans that are not the main three, and we're going to be doing this in this limited run.
Yeah, so this is just going to be like a 10 episode limited edition Khandaan podcast because this is based on feedback that we've received over the past couple of years actually. People have written in, people keep texting us on Twitter, on Instagram, they write us emails and they keep telling us, why don't you guys talk about other Khans? And we are like, we have a concept, that's why. And we only talk about the other Khans when they come up in relation to Salman, Amir or Shahrukh. But people have been like really insistent and actually we wanted to try something different. This is our little gift post 100 episodes to people who have been our long-time listeners. And it's actually a lot of fun also, like when we were coming up with this list and we were thinking about the different Khans that we wanted to talk about. And we decided to keep it to just actors, so we are not really talking about directors or music directors or, like people who are also working in the industry. We are talking very specifically about actors named Khan from the Bollywood or Hindi film industry. And we'll see how this goes, you guys.
Also, for those who attended our Twitter spaces, thank you guys for engaging with us. I know it was glitchy AF. But also we had a tough time to come up with 10 full names for the episodes. and for all those Zayed and Sanjay Khan fans, give us a shout out who you guys are because they are not included in this 10 episode mini-series.
Yeah. Also, I think the people that asked us about Zayed, maybe reach out to Zayed because I think he might appreciate that there's so much love for Zayed
For
Khan.
sure.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Just check up on him. How is he doing? Is he in Maldives? Is he in Mauritius?
So, the first Khan we picked was the obvious first one, and the one that, we get bombarded about the most is Saif Ali Khan.
Yeah, and I just like to point out that mostly when people are like, why don't you do other Khans? What they really mean is, why don't you do Saif Ali Khan? Like, let's be real. People just want to hear us talk about him, basically.
So, shall we talk like a couple of minutes why we didn't include him? And I think when I was preparing for this podcast, my commitment to not including him became stronger while I was kind of analyzing it. This is not a step. This is not a diss on his talent or the movies he's done or that I don't like his movies, because all of that is not true. I actually really like seeing him as a performer on screen, right? But he is so different from the other three Khans, right? Like throughout his career, I just don't think when you group all of them together, he is the odd one out. Always.
I think Saif does not consider himself to be one of the three Khans, or the Khans of Bollywood, whenever you see him speak publicly about his performance, about his career, about the work he has done in the showbiz industry, be it from brand endorsements to public appearances or the causes that he has supported to mainstream work on TV or on cinema, he does not consider himself the front runner. And he was already like he was happy with that, and he has already like made that choice of not being the front runner. I think that's why when we come to talk about the Khans of Bollywood, I guess the obvious choice is obvious. Salman, Shah Rukh, and Amir, and that's why it made sense for us to stick with the three. What about you, Amrita? What do you think?
Well, for me, it's slightly different. I think it's also because while Saif made his debut in 93, and I think he was shooting for Bekhudi in 92.
Wait, what? He was in Bekhudi?
He was originally cast in Bekhudi opposite Kajol.
Wow, okay.
And then he finished a complete schedule, and then he got kicked out because the director was like, he's not professional, which probably is true. I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he got kicked out for that, and then he got Parampara basically through Yash Chopra, I bet Mummy pulled a few strings. But, even though he was in that, like he made his debut around the same time as Shah Rukh, I don't think of him in that same generation of Khans. Because he's younger. He's like a good 5 to 6 years younger than the other Khans. So that puts him like a micro generation away. But also, Saif wasn't for a long time, he worked his way up to becoming the lead hero. You know what I mean? He wasn't a star right out of the gate the way the three Khans were. So we're talking about a different level of stardom. We can talk about, this is the difference between stardom and, performance chops. He's definitely a better actor than at least one of the Khans that we always talk about. But in terms of star power, those three are on a different stratosphere entirely.
For sure, yeah. I mean, for most of his career, he's been doing the supportive, role, and he's well known for that. For being the Robin to Akshay Kumar, or Shah Rukh Khan in Kal Ho Na Ho, and then Hum Tum came along. So I guess we will talk about that more, and also we will be talking about Mummy pulling the strings for Hum Tum.
So I actually have something that's related to this that I thought I would talk about later, but I guess it makes sense in this particular discussion, which is that Saif has a very different masculinity compared to the other three Khans. I think it's most comparable to Shah Rukh's, but really Salman and Amir particularly play to a very old school Hindi cinema masculinity. And I think we see that very obviously in terms of Salman's movie choices that continue even to this day. But with Amir, I think it's also the function of the movies that he chose in the first few years of his career, and also the choices that he makes today, that's why he couldn't imagine himself in Dar, for example, because the idea of not being the hero, even though he's done a couple of grey movies very early on in his career, I think, he's such a child of Bollywood. People don't talk about Amir being a child of Bollywood the way they do about Salman. But actually, Amir is just as much a Bollywood kid as Salman. And he's very rooted in those ideas of what a leading man is or should be.
Yeah.
And I think Shah Rukh was probably because he's an outsider and because he had a fresh set of eyes and he really had nothing to lose. So he just came in and he did all these different things. And I feel like Saif, because when he appeared in Hindi films, he really was an English boarding school kid. That's who he was. And he had this very fake kind of personality to him, if you see the mid to late 90s Saif, up until I think Kache Dage, you see a very different Saif than I feel like anyone that we have seen in Hindi cinema before. We've seen a lot of chocolate boys and stuff, like Kumar Gaurav and people like that. but that's not the kind of sexuality that Saif was projecting, which is very, how do I explain it? It's
androgynous.
yeah, like it's very like not punk rock, but like, like it's it always makes me think of like the English music scene when I see him in those mid 90s films.
To me, he reminds me of those. I don't know if you guys watch. I know Sujoy does, but Amrita, I don't know if you watch a lot of anime. But there's like a lot of these like super like hardcore fighter guys in animes that are like you couldn't distinguish them from women. Like it's like a thing, and I think that's what it kind of in a way. There's no doubt about his masculinity, but there's something kind of like crossing the spectrum or what we would consider old school masculinity with Saif.
I think in terms of Bollywood, like the demarcation between retrosexual and metrosexual that comes into play when we see the Ashik Awara era of Saif Ali Khan. I think that's how I would see it.
And maybe that's kind of because that was an era, right? Like metrosexual, that was an era. And I think it's not a coincidence that era is where Saif Ali Khan's career really bloomed.
Yeah.
He was that before, but the term didn't exist. You know what I mean? But then when it popped like in the early 2000s, that's where like the audience caught up with this energy that Saif Ali Khan was bringing, which before they just couldn't slot him. Like the only thing he could do was become like a supporting kind of an actor to Akshay, who was like clean masculinity the way we know it, So yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that it took him a while to really figure out.
But also,
I
like,
do.
the 90s were that thing, right? Because everybody was trying to figure it out. And especially Saif, if you, watch his interviews, he's mostly talking about he's just trying to survive in the industry by doing whatever gets offered to him and play roles that he doesn't really believe in. And we can see that.
Yeah. And I do think when I go back and watch some of his old interviews or even his recent interviews from a couple of years ago, don't you feel, Amrita, he's very, he's one of the best interview givers that there is. Like, he's so open about how he talks about things. It's quite so refreshing. And he also just seems like that distance from the Bollywood machine, from the star system, he can kind of look at it in a more kind of casual manner. And he has said that he did get frustrated that he didn't get that popularity or that kind of appeal from the audience's fandom that the other people were getting. And it did make him do some choices. And especially when we're talking about Dil Chahta Hai, that was one of the discussions that always comes back, that he was playing the lead in these terrible movies. And then he had to be I think it was Amir that told him to take this supporting role again, which he didn't want to do because he just had this idea of this is how I can become successful, and that wasn't the case anymore for him. So it's been interesting, but he's also he's always he's one of the ultimate comeback kid, right? People write him off and then he comes back, and he does that a few times in his career.
Yeah.
Because I was actually thinking right now that he's the Bobby Deol of the 90s, because everyone thought that he was a joke, and then somehow he just reinvented himself and then came back. Yeah,
because when we compare with the other Khans, all their debuts were massive successes, right? All three of them. Maybe Shah Rukh's a little less than the other two, but still, they made but Parampara totally flopped, and then he really had to find his footing, and that kind of took I think music took him, and I think he's even credited that Ole Ole was a big thing, more than a movie for him, right? Yeah. That really kind of kept it going. And then Main Khiladi Tu Anari happened, and he kind of found his footing a little bit as a supporting actor. But then it was until Dil Chahta Hai and Kal Ho Na Ho, where he was really the supporting role, that really changed things around for him. Hum Tum made him a lead actor, and then when that after a while didn't work anymore, then Sacred Games came in, and Sacred Games kind of made him like this alt cinema favorite kind of thing, right? Like then he started making Tandav and like even like something like Lal Kaptan, which I love. It's a movie I really really love, and there's no way any other Khan would have done Lal Kaptan. It could only be Saif, right? Because he had done a Sacred Games and he had taken those chances. So like every time people write him off, he has come back, but he's never reached the heights that the other three Khans have, I think. I don't know. Would you call him an A-lister?
I would, because I would consider the three Khans to be like A+ or super A-list.
Yeah. Because I think, Kareena is more of a Khan than Saif is.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, that's not even a question in my mind. Like, Kareena was a star. Like, we're talking about flop debuts. Like, her debut film was a total flop. It was opposite Tushar Kapoor, of all people.
Yeah. But Abhishek Bachchan, no? Refugee.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Refugee,
yeah.
sorry.
But that was also a flop.
That was also a flop. But I think it was like Refugee, and then the next one was the one with Tushar.
Mujhe kuch kehna hai.
Yeah, that's the one. But like, the thing is, like, Kareena, from her, like, even before her first film came out, Kareena was a star, you know what I mean? Like, she came into the world, like, ready to go. Which is not Saif. Like, Saif has a very different energy from that.
And Kareena hasn't stopped still,
No. Kareena can be like pregnant. She can be like, she might not have made a movie in like 5 years, like whatever it is. But the moment like she faces a camera, the moment she's out in public, you know that is a capital S star.
Yeah. No, it's Kareena is just special. I mean, do we want to talk a little bit about his marriages, Saif's? Because I do think, not to be like, not in a salacious manner or whatever, anything like that, but I do think it's interesting, like him marrying Amrita Singh back in the day. That was a big thing, right, Amrita?
Yeah, I mean, it was a scandal and a half. Like, he hadn't even, I believe he hadn't even made his debut properly at the time. And then all of a sudden he was married to Amrita. It was a huge scandal because Sharmila Tagore was not happy and she wasn't hiding it. And it was like a big thing. And then they were on, the cover of Stardust or something. And, like Amrita was all decked up as a bride and everything. And then all of a sudden he had a kid. That was Sarah. Like, things are just it was a very different sort of love story from everything that had happened up till then. And then for some weird reason, like, all of 90s Bollywood was just a succession of Bollywood newcomers eloping to get married with like various people. There was Divya Bharati, there was Saif, there was Mala Sinha's daughter. It was like a pandemic of, young star kids running off to get married to people that their parents hated.
बच्चे बिगड़ गए.
No, they watched Dil and said, "Humne ghar choda hai."
So then, but I also credit Amrita with Saif's career revival after he had that spate of flops. In the middle, because I remember all these stories coming out around that time about her networking behind the scenes, because she was a very respected actress in the 80s and stuff. And she had tons of connections, and it wasn't just Sharmila Tagore who was like, networking on his behalf. I think it was also Amrita, like she has very strong connections with pretty much everybody in the industry, as you can see after their divorce, because she immediately got a job. She got Sarah, I think everyone thinks that Karan Johar launched Sara Ali Khan because she's Saif's daughter, but I think it's also because she's Amrita Singh's daughter, honestly. So yeah, that's a very, very interesting marriage. And then I don't know what went wrong. And it's honestly none of our business. But after that, like there was that brief time when I think Bipasha and he had a scene going on during Race. And there's a bit of a sliding doors situation over there. Like, what if? But then Karan was just like, no, it must be Kareena or nobody else. And then doing Tashan, I think that's what happened.
Because I think what's interesting with his relationship with Amrita Singh is that not just the age difference, which is considerable. It's not something that happens a lot, right? Like even in movies, it doesn't happen a lot that you have an older female co-star. But the fact that I feel Amrita Singh's career was almost like she wasn't acting actively anymore, right? Unless my timelines are wrong.
She actually said at the time that she wasn't actually that interested in Saif, and she wasn't interested in socializing. She was just basically living as a bit of a hermit at the time. And so he'd ask her out, and she'd be like, well, I don't want to go out. If you want to see me, you can come see me at home, thinking that would put him off. And then he just came over and then never left. So they just ended up married almost like SAE.
Social distancing, setting the trends. Amrita Singh, oh my god.
Okay, so I'm just looking at IMDb. She was actually in her last few movies were 93, Aina. And she was in Rang with what's his name? Kamal Sadhna, right? Who took over from Bekhudi. So weird crossover there. I don't know who she was playing. Was she playing the mom? Which would be really weird.
I haven't seen that movie. Like, why would I watch a Kamal Sadhna movie?
Well, the songs were really big of that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of like the last few years. 93, she pretty much stopped. And then her next movie was like in 2002, 2003, where she was playing like Bhagat Singh's mom in Shaheed or something like that. So yeah, a big gap there. So she just handed over the baton to Saif, and Saif just like took it over. So that was kind of interesting. And then I think Kareena was kind of the big thing. It's funny, it's an on-screen pairing that's pretty much never worked. Commercially, I think they've not done any movie that's really worked, right? If I'm not mistaken.
So what all have they done? Omkara was...
Yeah, but that's not them paired together.
Exactly, yeah. So Kurban didn't work. Agent Vinod didn't work. Tashan didn't work. What else?
Also that war movie that I can't remember. LOC Kargil, is that what it is? Or Border? Which one?
LOC Kargil.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot of movies together, right? To start together and not really working. So that's kind of an interesting thing too. What are your favorite movies of Saif Ali Khan, Sujoy? Have you had a chance to kind of think about that? Like, because he's done quite a few.
Yeah.
What are kind of the ones you...
I think when I look back at his career, the movies that stand out for me are sadly the ones where he is not playing the lead, or he's sharing the sort of the limelight with somebody else. Even in movies like Parinita, where he's Shekhar. It's a story about Shekhar and Lolita, but it's actually a Vidya Balan movie because she eats the screen. So like going back to Main Khiladi Tu Anari, you get to see the comic chops of Saif Ali Khan and how natural it comes to him, because I think he's ad-libbing and improvising a lot, and he was allowed to do so, and that sort of buffoonery just suits him well, and I really feel at ease, and like that movie gives me a lot of joy, and Saif in that movie is really great. And to contrast with the serious cop that Akshay plays, it's a match made in heaven for buddy cop movies of the 90s. Dil Chahta Hai, obviously, we've already talked about it at length in our podcast episode. Parinita again, but again, half of that credit goes to Vidya Balan, and Omkara. That's a movie where he, like, he's a secondary character, but he totally, chews scenery.
Amrita?
So yeah, I'm in the same boat as Sujoy. There's a lot of old favorites in which he played an outstanding, like, supporting actor, like Maikiladi Tuanari, which, like, I haven't seen that movie in a few years now, but I still have a great deal of fondness for it. And I remember laughing so much every time Saif was on screen. And he and Akshay really have that amazing chemistry between the two of them. I really liked Kache Dage. I don't know if anyone else has seen that movie.
I really, really love that movie. Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie yet. That's the problem.
See it.
Yeah.
You should totally see it.
I absolutely love that soundtrack, but I'm yet to watch it because who's the director? Milan Luthria, isn't it? And I don't like his movies.
This one is an exception, though.
Okay.
Like, it's not like his movies that he did in the 2000s. This is like actually pretty good.
It is.
And again, like, the chemistry between him and Ajay Devgan in that film is like really great. Obviously, he was one of the standout performances in Dil Chahta Hai. I really liked him in Ye Dil Lagi, which was my choice for this particular episode, by the way. And shame on everybody who voted against it. You have no soul and no taste. It's he in that film was very. Like, we've seen spoiled brats who do like terrible things on in Indian cinema before, but this is actually like the younger brother in the mold of, say, Prem Chopra or Ranjit in the 60s and 70s. Like, he's trying to like give her a date rape drug and stuff. Like, it's pretty wild. Like, if you wanted to unpack it. So yeah, like that one. And then Omkara, of course, like blew my mind when I saw it because that was Saif as we had never seen him before. I would not have said that he had that gear in him until I saw that.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a single false note in that performance. Like, I believed the accent. I believed the look. I believed the performance. Like, everything about it was on point and I loved it.
When Omkara released, right, there was one of these publicity promos that used to do the rounds on cable TV and stuff. And it was just like an evil psycho kind of a smile with a Hitchcock angle where he's just staring at the screen and he's got this wide grin. It's so unhinged and like it was unlike anything that we had seen from Saif. I think that completely sold it.
Yeah. And there's actually a scene in Omkara where Ajay Devgan gets chosen to be the chief of their little gang.
Yeah.
And Saif was Langda Tyagi was expecting that to be his position. And there's a moment where he doesn't do anything. He just looks, and he's not even in the foreground. He's in the background. But he just flicks his gaze suddenly, like he was expecting something and then he's shocked. And so his gaze just flicks and then comes back and he's very still. And I still remember that exact shot all these years later because it was such a great little performance.
Okay, I want to ask you something because we were talking about Omkara, right? And I think with Vishal Bharadwaj movies, a lot of times an actor will get a lot of praise for a certain role that they do. Who do you think did it better? Shahid Kapoor in Haider or Langda Tyagi, Saif Ali Khan in Omkara?
Saif.
There's no doubt, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Like, for me too, there's no doubt that is like the supremo performance, right? Because I didn't even like in Haider, I cared for everybody else except Shahid's performance. But Langda is like it's one of for the books, right? That performance is so good.
And the other, I would say the last performance, I should probably choose something from his streaming things, but honestly, it's Lal Kaptan because I was watching that film and I couldn't help but think of the growth that he was demonstrating on screen from the Saif that I remember in the 90s And it's very different to discovering him as an actor today and then going back and watching what he used to be like 25 years ago. And watching that growth happen in real time, where you saw that at a certain point in your life. And then 25 years later, you see that same, spindly guy from Ashikawara deliver that performance from Lal Kaptan. And the way that he's learned to modulate his voice from his Rani days to what he was able to do, the promos that they were able to do from his dialogue delivery in that film. It's amazing. That is an actual growth arc that you can see. Lal Kaptan.
I feel people are still sleeping on Lal Kaptan. I feel there's still not been a kind of reappreciation of that movie, and I find it so weird because this is the kind of movie that people should revisit and things like that, and it still hasn't happened. It's not been on any film companion underrated lists or anything like that happening, and it is so rewatchable. I think the only problem is that they want to reveal something later on in the movie, and the reveal is very straightforward. I think maybe they push too much on that part of the movie, but just the world that they create is so amazing. You could just rewatch that movie as many times as you want. For me, it's one of my favorite. It's up there. Do you have any other?
Nope. I think that's quite a list, actually.
Yeah. So I kind of asked this question to our Twitter listeners, and that's how we wanted to come up with the poll, because we really weren't sure, because there's so many different aspects of Saif's career. We didn't know which one to pick. And I just kind of let myself be bombarded with suggestions from everybody. So I kind of grouped them, and the main audience picks were Omkara, Love Aajkal, Hum Tum, and Salam Namaste. Those were the kind of ones that the most people asked to kind of talk about. We didn't pick Salam Namaste because I feel Hum Tum is so close. Yeah. In terms of the cinematically, it's pretty much the same movie from the same era. And then the other suggestions were where I feel it's not really his movie, but he's such a strong supporting lead, and the whole movie is so good. And that was Dil Chahta Hai, Parinita, so the one that you picked, Sujoy, and then Ek Hasina Thi also was coming up a lot of times. And that links a bit to what you were saying about Ye Dil Lagi, because he's done a lot of these great characters. He's done Ek Hasina Thi, Ye Dil Lagi, but also Kya Kehna. Right? Mm-hmm. That was quite a bold kind of negative character that he took on. Omkara, Kurban, where he was playing pretty much like a terrorist. Agent Vinod, I would even say he's not like a classical James Bond he's playing. He's playing a very dark grey character there. So he's always had and there's more, even something like Bullet Raja, where you would think that's a classical Rowdy Rathore type of movie, but it's not. It does kind of try to do something different. They don't succeed whatsoever. And I'm sure you guys have not seen Bullet Raja, right?
No.
I have, obviously. They tried something, it didn't work, but it's really cool that, Saif tried. And it's funny when Saif tries something and he thinks it's going to be this massive hit, but he's just drops the ball completely, right? It's hilarious because he's done that a few times. Agent Vinod and Ekta Tiger. There's not that much difference between those two, but Saif's just didn't work. And again, Rowdy Rathore and Bullet Raja, on the face of it, you would think it's kind of similar movies, but they're not. And what appeals to Saif is what makes the movie flop in a way, and it happens a lot of times. And then the nostalgia picks were Ye Dil Lagi and Hamesha. We got a few votes for Hamesha. I've not rewatched Hamesha. I have no memories of that.
And I don't want to.
That was was that a what do you call it?
A reincarnation story.
Yeah. Is that the word? Yeah. Is that was Hamesha, right? Or
yeah.
Reincarnation.
Hamesha, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. The movie was.
I just wanted to point out about Kya Kehna. His character's name is Rahul Modi in that movie.
Is it? Okay. And then my favorites were Race. I have to add Race in this because that movie is bonkers. Like, it's his most successful movie, and I like that it's his most successful movie because he probably hates that it's his most successful movie, and that I really appreciate. It has Katrina in it, so that's always plus points. But that movie, like, it's so bonkers now. Like, Race, I don't think we've not talked about it, but that movie is
20 minutes into the movie, there's already 7 plot twists in.
insane. It is the most Abbas Mastan movie to ever exist. It's insane. But it's fun. I think like he's having fun with it, and it was such a massive success that they thought, let's do it now with Salman Khan, and then it like went terribly. He was great in Eklavya too, which I have to rewatch. It's been a while. I think also another movie that I think probably needs a bit more critical praise than it does. But
all these Vidhu Vinod Chopra movies, right? They are available only on Eros now, and I hate it.
Yeah. That's why. Although Lal Kaptan is on Prime though.
Is that a Vidhu Vinod Chopra movie?
No. It's not, but I'm just reminding you because I think you've not seen it, Sujoy.
No,
right?
I haven't, no. But I'm not watching anything these days. I'm just watching Indian Idol and whatever I need to watch for the podcast.
Yeah, your life choices, man. I don't know. And then I think Sacred Game needs to be in here. Like if I go through the list of all of his performances, Sacred Games is up there, right? Like it was, especially the first season.
Yeah.
Like let's not talk too much about the second season because it was quite terrible. But the first season was really, really good.
Okay.
But the one we picked out of the poll, it was close, but I think Hum Tum really took it on this one, right?
Which was the second choice for them to pick?
It was Parinita.
Okay.
It came close. Ye Dil Lagi was not even in the running because it was just Amrita and Anandani and Yamini, I think, that were voting for it. So, yeah, that didn't make it, unfortunately.
Only the people with the best taste voted for it.
So, Hum Tum was kind of an important movie for Saif, right? Because after his kind of resurgence after doing, Dil Chahta Hai and Kal Ho Na Ho, he was still not a leading man. He was a really good supporting actor. But Hum Tum solidified him that he can lead a movie. And then this is probably his most successful run as an actor started with this movie, I think. Were you happy with the choice? Amrita, revisiting Hum Tum, how long had it been that you saw this movie?
I don't think I've seen it since it came out, and I'll be honest, like it's not one of my favorites.
It still isn't.
Yeah.
Interesting. Why? Shall we get into it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we should probably start with Sujoy, who probably likes it.
I don't. I really don't. I had to I was half scrolling on Twitter and Reddit and everything whilst I was watching this movie. Yeah, it just was a throwback to a time where we were still discussing about gender roles, in movies. Ladki aisi hoti hai, ladka aisa hota hai, and that Rishi Rich soundtrack just brought me back into that era. And just like Kunal as a character, Karan as a character was just like he knows he's bad and he's saying it. All of that.
So here's the summary of Hum Tum for the people that don't remember or haven't read it, right? So this is from IMDb. A novel look at the internal battle of the sexes and the trials and tribulations of Karan and Riya and their attempts to understand each other. And I feel this has been written by Yashraj because it seems so like polished.
Highbrow.
Like so polished in terms of no, it's not. It's not written by Yashraj. Official source? No, written by official source. See? I could sense the Yashraj in this. It was directed by Kunal Kohli, who was a film critic, right? Like I remember his show he used to have, right?
Yeah, on Z Cinema.
I really enjoyed that show. I don't remember the name of it anymore.
I think it was called Cinema on Z.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was a good show or there was just not that much thoughtful film criticism that, that I kind of enjoyed that.
Okay,
It
I'll
was
correct myself.
incredibly derivative of Roger Ebert is what it was. He would dress like Roger Ebert. He would sit like Roger Ebert, even to the point where he would like hold his hands and fold them in front of him the way Ebert used to do it. And I talked the same way. It was, which basically to me, like that is what Kunal Kohli and his entire career is about. Like, just
exactly
other people's ideas and concepts run through like his own like touch, I guess, where everything just becomes worse. I think for me, like Hum Tum is just basically all concept. I remember after
it's like, so much concept, so much,
There's like it's very try hard and wannabe to me. Like and I felt this the moment it came out. Like I couldn't understand. Like I just couldn't connect to what everybody else was feeling about this film because everyone kept saying things like, "Oh, the cartoon is so cute," and I'm like, "Okay, like."
Okay, can I ask you, like, how old are these cartoon characters supposed to be? Because they look like kids, but they act like teenagers. Like, no, not even teenagers, like university guys, like, like older than 18, because they're like fat shaming each other and they're like, तू दूसरी लड़कियों को देखता है. It's like, this kid is 6. Like, why does he know that much? Although it is funny because maybe it's an idea about these kind of thoughts are of a small boy and not of a real man. Like, maybe that's something that they're trying to... Maybe I'm giving too much credit to this movie.
These are all thoughts in Karan Kapoor's head. So that's what it makes sense.
Yeah. But this was also the most successful Kunal Kohli movie, right? Like Fana, this one, and that's it. His career went nowhere after that. Like he did flop after flop after flop, and the biggest, like Teri Meri Kahani, just killed his career, and then he's just been doing, like, now I think he's doing TV work.
My favorite Kunal Kohli thing that has happened of late is Rani was celebrating her birthday or, like some sort of anniversary, and people on Twitter were just like, "Congratulations, Rani, blah, blah, blah," and or she won an award or something. And Kunal Kohli was like... here is a shout out to somebody whose career even I have contributed. Congratulations. And I was like, I think Rani had a career before you and I think she has one after you. It's fine.
Yeah.
So let's get into Hum Tum a little bit now. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. Rewatching it I enjoyed it, but I immediately thought this is going to be a struggle to review, because on the one hand you want to review the movie, but what's very easy is to get like sidetracked into a discussion about aged gender dynamics. Like there's like two things, and I think they're so intertwined because that's all this movie is, right?
Yeah.
It becomes very hard to look at this movie. I think it was trying to do something different or talk about things, but having a male director and having a male writing team and calling the character Hum the boy and Tum the girl immediately others 50% of the gender in the world. So it becomes very hard when you always center it around Hum being like men, right? And that kind of like pushback is kind of was tough for me, but I imagine, Amrita, it's probably even tougher for you because it didn't even work when it came out for you, you're saying.
No, but also, like, Saif in this movie, like, you're supposed to see him grow as a character, and you see, like, like how he is changing over the years. But the thing is, like, every single so-called growth that he has, it's tied to something that is happening in Rani's life. Like, there's nothing that is, like, happening in Saif's life that is actually propelling him to become a better person or, grow up a little bit. It's literally him running into Rani, assaulting her, then playing like, third fiddle at her wedding, and then trying to cheer her up after she is widowed, which she never asked him to do, then sleeping with her and then offering her marriage as if it's 19th century, like, मैंने तुम्हें खराब कर दिया, like, now we have to get married.
हमसे भूल हो गई.
Yeah.
Although technically, Saif Ali Khan's character was so drunk that he could not walk. So I don't know if he's the instigator in that sequence there, no?
But also, like, that's the thing, like, like, it's like Rani, at no point in time are Rani and Saif at the same level in the film, She's always like, even when they're young, she seems to know things that he doesn't. She seems to know, like, things like boundaries and, like, like how to take care of herself. Whereas he's just basically this overgrown puppy. And then even as adults, she's a very mature woman who's dealing with a lot of things in her life. And he is basically just having a ball. And I really didn't buy the relationship between the two of them. I didn't buy it then, and I didn't buy it now. And I think for this movie to work, because this is supposed to be a rom-com, so you do need to buy into the idea that these two people are made for each other in some way, or, they deserve to be with each other, and they, are working towards that happy ever after ending. But I simply couldn't get on board.
Yeah, because there's also no real point where you, like, the movie is telling you that Saif Ali Khan's character is in love apparently with Rani at the wedding. Like, he's looking at her like, oh, she's getting married, and there's this voiceover कि जिंदगी बहुत लंबी है और हमारी कहानी लंबी है और ये हमारा end है and all that. And it's like, where is this even based on? Like, there's not been any inclination from either of those that they have any other feelings than hating each other. Like, Rani actually hates that he's at that wedding. Like, why are you here? I hate you. Like, it's and she's still mad. Like, she makes, she tells his girlfriend in New York that he, harassed her and assaulted her, and then they break up. And then next time she meets him at the wedding, where he's has a terrible haircut. So why is then the voice over telling us in slow motion that he has some feelings for Rani, which is really, really weird. You always feel that Rani is much better, or Ria's character is much better than Karan's character, but you just want them to be together because that's what the movie is telling you, and these are actors and stars and stuff like that. So it is very, I think what you guys were saying, that this movie has concepts and ideas, but it doesn't really have actual real people or characters in this, right? I think that's what we're kind of trying to say.
And also, like, Kunal Kohli just tries to embellish it with every single, nostalgic reference that he can think of that will make the audience go, aha, I know that, aha, Tisri Manzil, aha, Rishi Kapoor, aha, Abhishek Bachchan. He just keeps throwing that at us without any sort of cohesiveness, I guess. It's all just cheap tricks, and I hate it. And he's done that before as well with Mujhse Dosti Karoge, a favorite movie of Beth, but it's just like playing Chitrahar with us.
But also, like, okay, let's talk about Abhishek Bachchan's character. So, at a certain point, in the first arc of the film, they meet on a plane. They're on their way to New York and are stuck in Amsterdam for a few hours. And, they hang out. He tries to...
By the way, like, they've got 6 hours of transit in Amsterdam, and they went to a museum.
I don't mind, though. Like,
no, I'm saying I will spend more than 6 hours in the museum, but it's not doable in 6 hours. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. No, because if you have one chance to see these amazing works of art, like, you can, you're never going to see a Rembrandt in its full glory. Yeah. I understand that you want to go, but I have to also say, I have lived in Amsterdam. I know the city really, really well. The geography of this movie is infuriating, first of all. And then, by the way, I have to tell you, if people hadn't noticed this, all of Paris is actually still shot in Amsterdam.
Yeah, for sure.
So all of the French people are actually Dutch people, and all of the buildings are Dutch, and it's really, really annoying. I was watching this with my actual French wife, and she was rolling her eyes so much, like she was offended. Like she is offended. Like she was like, man, if people would do this with any other race or country, it would not fly. Like, why can Bollywood like just exchange my country with another country and it's fine? Like, what?
I mean, like the same museum features again when they shoot Chak De Chak De, when they are supposedly going to be in Paris, but they are outside the Rijksmuseum. Again, singing Chak De Chak De.
Physiology and immigration of France and Holland is very, very different. You have a Suriname kids in orange bombers dancing in Chak De. Like, that's a Dutch thing. You don't have Surinamers in France. That just doesn't exist. It's insane to me, yeah.
Anyway. We hate you, Kunal Kohli.
Kunal Kohli is like they're all white. It's fine. सब अंग्रेज हैं. So then they never see each other, I guess. They think they're never going to see each other until they run into each other in New York. And Saif basically has his girlfriend with him. And then, wait, is she his girlfriend or...
High school's a girlfriend. Shit.
Amrita, sorry, I think I sidetracked you because you were talking about Abhishek, actually.
Yeah. Right? So I'm just coming.
She's getting there. Just like Kunal Kohli, she's taking the scenic route.
No, I'm just actually so that we never have to go back to this part of the movie.
Yeah, she's his girlfriend from Delhi University or something.
Yeah. And then it turns out that Ria and this girl are actually, they've been friends for a long time, and Ria outs him as a perv, and he gets dumped. And then what happens is the action moves to Bombay, and now again, like some time has passed, we don't know how much time, but Saif has a terrible haircut and Rani is getting married. And Saif's mom is the wedding planner, and they have a fun song. I think this is the song that everybody likes from this movie, right? Like, I feel like this is not actually my favorite song, but I feel like a lot of people like. Do you guys like this particular sort of song? Because as Sujoy was saying, like Kunal Kohli definitely likes to pepper in some Easter eggs and stuff, and this is a very old school chhedchhad gender-based song. And I don't like that particular type of song, so it's not my jam. But do you guys like it?
Which which song is it referencing specifically? Do you know?
No,
because I didn't know this was a reference to something.
No, it's not a direct reference to a song, I feel, but it's a reference to that particular type of song, we used to have them in the 60s and 70s, like Sari Ladkiyan is taraf, Sare Ladke us taraf.
Like Dulhan Ki Saheli, that
exactly.
Kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
I have to say, the song is Ye Gore Gore Se Chhore, and the translation is Chocolatey Boys. So Gore and chocolate are exactly the opposite, but I was just worried. I just thought like Rani looked so good in this whole sequence. I don't know much else about what was going on because Saif looked so bad, Rani looked so good. That's what mainly I was focused on. I didn't know this was like a fan favorite of people, this song necessarily.
And then it turns out that Rani's actually marrying Abhishek. And this was around the time that Rani and Abhishek were, they clearly had a lot of chemistry. And they were in a bunch of movies together, and they were rumored to be dating off screen. And, there was a whole lot of drama attached to that, obviously. And then there's a scene where, they have the wedding, and it's like Asim says, like all of a sudden Saif is like, oh, like maybe this is my soulmate. And you're just like, how? What? You just had an entire song about how much you hate each other. And then, he drops her off at the airport with her new husband. And then Abhishek apparently cottons on to the fact that Saif has a crush on his wife. And they have a little heart-to-heart, man-to-man talk. And that is such a weird scene. Like, I remember people telling me at the time that they really liked that scene and it was so evolved, and Abhishek's character in that scene was the kind of man that, you know, they hope to marry, etc. And I remember thinking, that's just weird. But I don't know, like, that just might be like my reaction as a woman. So I want to ask you two, as the men of this Manly Man podcast, like, what do you think of that scene?
Yeah. So you go first. You're more of a man.
So he basically, what he says is, like how I interpret it is, men will be men. It's just that I got lucky and you didn't. That's what he says, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know what he's saying because it's slightly confusing. I thought he was like saying, I don't want a sentimental scene where I discover that you're in love with my wife. I think that's what he said, but I'm not 100% sure because I got really confused because Abhishek has really like I was so happy to see him first of all in the cameo. Like, I totally forgotten that he was in this movie, and I was like, it's Abhishek. Oh yeah, Rani and Abhishek, that was a thing. So that's where I was. But yeah, Sujoy, I thought it was very confusingly written what the motivation of this character.
Like, he's basically sort of breaking the mold for Saif in I think that's what I read it as, you know, like Rani thinks of him as the ideal husband, and then Saif is of that opinion that he's going to be boring, but then Abhishek comes in and breaks the mold for him that, I'm also a guy, I can let at girls, and I got lucky with Rani, you didn't, and I know you have a crush on her.
There's also that, is it him or Rishi Kapoor that says there's like a little boy in every man and like he doesn't want to grow up and women force him to grow up or something like that? Is it Rishi or Abhishek?
I have no idea. Like, I just saw the movie yesterday and I can't remember. But like Rishi also says, like, but at the end of it, we just want to come home to somebody who can welcome us and all of that and take care of us.
Yeah. Yeah, वो घर ही जहाँ बेटियाँ रोटी बनाए, you know that.
Yeah.
वो घर ही घर.
These Barjatias and the Kunal Kohlis, they all share the same sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's tough because this movie is almost 20 years old, right? At 20, like, this is, like, I don't want to be like those BuzzFeed articles where we're just dissing on movies of 20 years ago, because I think a lot of conversations and things have changed and a lot of things have not changed. I think in this era, I'm going to say something controversial. Maybe. I think this was the era where commercial Bollywood was really trying to do something different, more than it is even now. At the moment, they just don't know what to do and they want to just get the next Bahubali or, get the next Lunchbox. That's what only two things Bollywood is trying to do. At this time, they were just trying to have, kind of different conversations and trying to bring in these modern ideas of manlyhood and, I'm thinking of, like Kal Ho Na Ho even, like where he's, passing on the woman that he loves to somebody else because he will be alive, or, like virginity, like sleeping together and living together, like Salam Namaste, like these concepts, like even in this, like they're pushing back against this idea of, now we have to get married because we slept together, because clearly we know that Saif is in the wrong there. That idea, that notion has become old. And I think they're trying with this Abhishek character to do something new, but it's like, when actresses get asked, are you a feminist? And they say, no, I'm not. This is what this movie is about. Like, they don't want to be flat out and say like, everybody should be equal. everybody should be equal, but I should also be able to sleep with other women before I get married. That kind of thing. Like, itna hai, magar zyada nahi. Don't like put everybody in the place, guys. Like, ghar pe rotiyan banaye. That kind of thing. So I think it's kind of in that twilight zone between the two, and it's trying something. And I think we also even said this with Dil Chahta Hai, that it's trying something, but it's not there yet. At least not where I am at now in terms of my, morality and worldview. I think maybe in 2000 I was more closer to what this movie was trying to say. And I think I've said many, many times already that 20 years ago, I was an asshole, much more than I am now. And I hope in 20 years later, I can come back and look at this age and say the same thing again. So it's all about growth, guys. I don't know, Amrita, does that kind of like
satisfies you?
No, I see what you're trying to say, and I have the same feelings too. I feel like that was the era when Bollywood was actually trying to make its kind of cinema. Like, it wasn't trying to make other kinds of cinema. I know, like, Shakila, Get Filmy, who's been on this podcast before, gets really upset because she keeps seeing, like, Hindi cinema trying to make like pan-Indian cinema, and she's like, why pan-Indian? Why don't you just make your own kind of cinema? Because that's what you're actually good at. And that goes to what Asim was saying, in that Bollywood has kind of lost its way over the past few years. It doesn't really know what it connects to anymore. And I think like at this point in Bollywood history, they actually still had a good grasp of what it was that they wanted to do and what they liked and were good at, but were also trying to incorporate a changing India and its ethos in it, which is why you had, you had like big star-driven projects like this one.
Yeah. And like the biggest studios, Yash Raj and Dharma, both were pushing this kind of different views.
Right.
And now they seem to have totally stopped, right? And this was not like an indie studio trying to do, this was like a commercial approach to something really different. And that's what I was kind of looking at. I understand that it doesn't land, especially right in 21. But at that time, I kind of get like for people, this was fresh. But it is weird. Like clearly they haven't figured it out. The writers and the director haven't figured it out where they actually stand. And I just think that, if you had women in the writing team, it would help. It would make it much more balanced, which just isn't the case. It is a very male view of how it's written, and that's why it's haphazard and clumsy. Like, the last 5 minutes I've been talking, and then Amrita summarized it much better than I did. And we made it look smarter what I was saying. That's what this movie needed too.
In that vein, like, I also want to point out, like, around this time, Yash Raj Studios was actually trying to get into the Indian TV industry, and they were actually ahead of their time. Because I think like the kind of shows that they were making back then, if they released it on streaming these days, they would actually make bank, because it's exactly the kind of shows that I think people want to watch on streaming these days. I see a lot of people saying they want something clean and they want something fresh and funny and cute, basically. And they don't see that on Indian streaming because everything is either sex all the time or murder all the time. And Yash Raj at the time was making like rom-coms and thrillers and things. And those are, I don't know where you can even find them. Like, I don't know if Yash Raj actually is even putting it out anywhere. But those were, again, like, you had the same kind of sensibility to which a lot of Indians and Desis in general are wedded and find comforting and familiar. But we're also innovating, and we're trying to show a more modern face and featured, working women and women of different shapes and sizes and like people with different motivations and sexualities, without it just being like all about sex. Because here's a thing, like sexuality doesn't always have to be about sex, which is something that I don't think a lot of Indian streaming content providers understand as yet. So I think back then it actually was a more interesting time in terms of Bollywood content, as Asim is saying. This movie, however, is uh, is a hit and a miss.
Yeah. I like one thing that I do like is those. So no, like getting back to that era, right? Like this movie has all of the 2000 film techniques too. You know, it has. It has the remember like all movies having chapters like this one does. You know, like this was like
they saw like one Quentin Tarantino movie and they're like, "Yep, we are doing that for all the movies." You know?
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't even mentioned the big thing. This is pretty much When Harry Met Sally, right? This is like all this movie is.
Yeah.
But what the funny part is, it's so like, and rewatching it kind of came back to me. This timeline is so condensed, like all of this is basically happening in 3 years. That's it, right?
Wait, what?
Yeah. Like all of like them meeting on the plane and them getting married at the end. It's not more than 3 years if you put all of the timelines together.
Oh, I thought it was like 10 years or something.
That's, yeah, because he's like, so they meet on the plane. 3 months later, they meet in New York, right? And then I think it's like 6 months later they meet back in Mumbai. I don't know why. They didn't
For the
finish
wedding.
college necessarily. Yeah.
No. So Saif is back after 3 years in Mumbai after his college and stuff, and that's where he's helping his mom out with the wedding. So that's 3 years from their initial meeting.
Oh, is it 3 years?
And then
because Abhishek dies 1 year after the wedding.
And then he spends some time in Paris with Rani, and then they kind of go separate ways, and then she comes to Mumbai and he's setting him up with Jimmy Shergill, and then after a while he gets
1 year
engaged.
later he writes 1 year later he writes the book, and then she meets them. So it's not that long. Like it's not like 15 years.
It's like 5 years at most.
Yeah, exactly. And that is not the case with Harry Met Sally. Harry Met Sally, they really go through like almost like 15, 20 years, like of all of them, really growing together. And here it's just like, there's a different era because there's a bad hair choice, be it, on the hair or on the face, like they have like, that's what makes the time change a little bit. But that's the one thing that I found really funny. And also the other film technique of 2000 is, remember like always they had like a song where they imagined different versions of their life. That was also a very 2000 thing, and I was watching like the title track and I was like, oh yeah, right, like Shah Rukh has done that and Salman has done that, and they've all done this, like, oh, think of how you were if you would be this way. It's just interesting. And obviously the fashion choices and things like that is also like because Tom Cruise's hair is like Mission Impossible 2. It's funny that both of those, like Hum Tum and Mission Impossible 2, cross together in a bad haircut, which I just found interesting.
Somebody just informed Tom Cruise that this happened.
Yeah.
So that actually segues me into my question, which is what is your favorite song in this film?
The title track for me.
Yeah. Have you listened to the flute version of the title track?
No, I hate like that. Only reminds me of going to Indian restaurants and them playing like Yash Raj instrumentals. Like there is a like saxophone instrumental version of Kajrare and I hate it. So all these instruments, they either play on Indian Airlines when you're flying international, when you're still boarding and putting your luggage away. The Yash Raj instrument. There's like a Shiv Kumar Sharma Santoor instrumental version of all the Silsila songs, or all these Yash Raj instrumentals. Man, I just can't stand it. No. Sorry, Amrita.
This one is actually not that bad. It's actually the entire song, except like they replace the vocals with the flute. But apart from that, they actually have the rest of the orchestra playing. So it's not just like one lone flautist playing Hum Tum.
I love the Hum Tum track. I even like posted it on Twitter like a couple of weeks ago because I it just like randomly came on my when I was driving in the car, and I was like, man, this is such a good era of music and songs, and it's quite simple. There's not that much like accessories to this song. It's just the voices. But it's so beautiful. Like, it still works for me. And I think, honestly, it's the only really song that I like in this soundtrack.
I think this is one of Prasoon Joshi's like earlier works when he was going from being an ad man to becoming a film lyrics writer. And I think it stands out. Like, it's really good. It's lyrical. It's really like... I don't know, the structure of the song is also quite different than usual. I thought the rhyming sequences and stuff. And it's probably the best, like, Babul Supriyo song that ever was. He just sounded really good. The song, the picturization is great. But obviously it ends on a very hilarious note that, if you want to talk about it.
Wait, what's the ending of
the song? Saif got drunk and ordered sex on a beach. That's what I wrote in my...
Oh, you mean the beach boning?
Yeah, the beach boning, but there's the kiss, and the camera has a crane shot and it pans away, but they keep lingering on, and Rani is...
It's really... it's awkward now, like they don't know what to do. Like,
Rani's hiding her face. Rani's hiding her face, and you can clearly see her giggling away.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Like I've said many, many times before, stop Bollywood uncles from kissing. Hey, please just stop.
Oh, God. No, because... yeah. And also just then there is the last 15 minutes where there's like this weird confusion between like getting married and like he's thinking they're thinking the same thing, but from completely opposite angles. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I needed this. Like, I feel then at that movie, because the characters are grown up, I think the movie should have grown up too. Yeah. And it refuses to do that.
But like,
and I think
it's still the same Kunal Kohli, so...
Like Saif Ali character, his whole arc is that he has daddy issues, basically, right? That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. And I think they just add more and more Rishi in it for no apparent reason. I think people that like Rishi Kapoor probably enjoy it. But I never liked his character in this movie either. And I just don't like that, because the mom, like I remember in the first sequence, Saif Ali Khan is at the airport and he's like making fun of women, or I don't care about my girlfriend, I'm just going to sleep around. And like his mom actively tells him, I hate it when you talk about women this way. So clearly they've had this conversation many times before. Even when he comes back and he's like depressed, he's like, why don't you just do something? Pick up the phone, come to work with me, cut your hair, do something, damn it. She's trying everything she can to raise this man boy. And it's just not working. It's just funny because a lot of times, and it's a complicated, and I don't want to make it like a thing, but there's this idea about on Twitter I see a lot, raise your boys not to rape women. And I was like, I don't know if I understand the sentiment of it, right? Like, don't make your boys into an asshole, but this is what she's trying to do, and it does not help at all whatsoever. He's just a proper incel. He's basically an incel, right? Yeah. To the point, there's like there's this joke where Hum Tum character is saying, औरतें कभी सिर्फ कामयाब आदमी के पीछे भागती हैं, ha 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 ha, and it's like, when you're making a joke because actually you're not kamyab, and it's like, see, it's because he's rich, right? That's why you like him, right? Not because I'm an incel and a horrible human being that women don't like me, but it's because the other guy is rich, right? So it's I don't know. Again, Amrita, can you see what I'm saying? Like, can you filter what I'm saying and make it sound smarter?
That was just really weird to me. Like, who on earth like tells their mom that, like, I don't care like how liberal your relationship is with your mom. Like, who tells their mom that, I'm just, going abroad so I can like sleep with women? Like, what?
Yeah. It's weird, and like also is this idea that he has definitely Rishi Kapoor's character on a pedestal.
And Rishi's character in this is like very, very sad. Like, it's just a sad drunk is what he is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's not somebody that, you would like, he's singing "Main Shair To Nahi" to a Dutch woman in a bar, and she's like, that doesn't work. Do not be singing, "Shair To Nahi" to white women. It's not going to work out for you guys. Like, people think that's going to work. Yeah, it's. What do you think of Sujoy, man, of Rishi Kapoor? You've met him.
Yeah.
You've asked him a question
About Ajuba. I mean, I'm a big fan of Rishi Kapoor's work, but not in Hum Tum, not in cameo roles like this. It's like at the end of Love Aajkal, where you have the Rishi Kapoor and the Neetu Singh cameo together for like 3 seconds or 4 seconds before the end credits roll. That's a better, story, love story told in just those 3 seconds than this whole movie. It's just as I said, a Kunal Kohli cheap trick so that Rishi Kapoor can lip sync to Shailendra sing again to Main Shair To Nahi. It just feels like I don't know.
Because the similarity is obvious with Love Aajkal, right? Because it's a lot of the same. Like, you see them together playing that, singing that song to the Dutch girl, and you say, yeah, they could be, father and son. They look similar, though they don't. But and he has that same thing where at the climax of Love Aajkal and this is basically Rishi Kapoor telling Saif Ali Khan that, grow up and don't be like me or be like me, and this is real love and that is not real love. But also just the fact that he comes into the house again after he's not been there for like 25 years, and then he apologizes in third person.
And she's standing right next to her, listening to everything. Talk about desi passive aggressiveness,
Yeah.
But also, like, Rishi Kapoor and Rati Agnihotri have also played similar characters in the Kajol movie, right? What was that? Kuch Khatti, Kuch Meethi, where it's a remake of Parent Trap with Kajol playing double role. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Okay. Wait, she's an adult in Parent Trap?
Yeah. That's how we roll.
That's hilarious. Because wasn't there like a Mithun version? I remember a Mithun version in the 80s where there was like Parent Trap pretty much. But that was with kids.
Yeah.
At least.
With Padmini Kolhapuri, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Padmini wasn't playing the kid, somebody else.
It's really...
Shall we wrap things up?
Yeah, let's...
last... Like, I've got a question. Like, so I was earlier talking about Mummy pulling the strings, and obviously Sharmila Tagore, who was the CBFC head then, or the committee on the National Film Awards. Saif won the 2004 National Film Awards for Best Actor for this movie in Hum Tum, right? And looking at that list, Maqbool was also released in 2004 with Irfan Khan and Pankaj Kapoor. Like, there was an uproar. Like,
what were the other nominees? Do you remember?
I mean, National Film Awards never released nominees.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But to look back at Filmfare, Saif won Best Comedian for this movie.
Although, I don't know. I kind of feel that makes sense. Like, I like it, going back to that era, and like if there's that push, I think also Bollywood Awards, like, they want, like, it's that comeback kid story, right? For Saif, like, people wanted him to do well. He just has so much goodwill with the industry. I think when he finally, hit his stride and hit gold box office wise, people just wanted to kind of celebrate that, because he'd been like, trampling in the mud for so long.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. I think it's hard to, when you look back and say, this should have won, that didn't win, like Scent of a Woman kind of thing, I don't know. It's hard, but I think, I don't know, it makes sense. And also Maqbool, like, probably 25 people watched that movie when it came
But it's
out.
the National Film Awards. It doesn't really rely on box office per se.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Two notes that I had is that Mir's shirt choices are hilarious.
उसका कंप्यूटर का बिजनेस है तो वो प्रिंट करता है.
वो भी इंटरेस्टेड है, घर पे दुकान में थोड़ी कंप्यूटर्स कर लेती है. एंड देन ऑल्सो दिस मूवी मेक्स द कार्डिनल सिन ऑफ सेइंग Beyonce is boring.
Yeah, what the hell? But did they actually get the music rights for those songs that they play in the movie?
Obviously not. Obviously not. Oh, back then even maybe you could get Beyonce's songs for cheap. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe she wasn't the Beyonce we know now. Yeah. Amrita, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't care for this movie.
Sujoy?
Kiran Kher and the Curse of the Punjabi Ma. Stop playing the Punjabi dhol music when a Punjabi character appears on screen.
That was also a 2000 thing, yeah. Right? Like Punjabi moms, like the very like Yash Raj Dharma kind of thing. Like since that template went away, Kiran Kher's career went away. Yeah. Like this was all she was doing.
She had to resort to BJP, man.
Yeah, she had to resort to bigotry. Okay. Yeah, let's wrap it up. I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the movie. I thought it was quite breezy, to be honest. I'm surprised that you were scrolling back and forth, and I think with the chapters happening, I could just stop it at the chapter. I watched it in like 3 goes, so I think I just stopped it between chapters, did my thing, and then the next day I watched the rest of it, and I thought it went okay. I just, maybe it's just me liking this era of Bollywood and just being okay with revisiting it. But I think also with the other choices, Ye Dil Lagi or Parinita, all of them I would have wanted to revisit. So I was fine with it. I kind of enjoyed it. But Amrita, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at AmritaIQ, or you can check out my book channel on YouTube called Amrita by the Book.
Sujoy?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at 9e3k, and you can follow the Khandaan podcast Instagram at Khandaan podcast.
Great. I'm at Asim Bernie. You know what? Drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of this limited run we're doing of 10 episodes. We have a list of names. I think we mentioned this on our spaces. We haven't published it anything, but I think it'll be nice to have a surprise. And follow us on social, because we will be asking which of these movies would you want us to consider, and that helps us make the poll if we're running a poll every time. I'm not sure if it's going to be relevant to every Khan that we've picked, but I think it could be interesting. Or drop us an email if you're not on social media. Drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. Think of the Khans we might be talking about, and give us some suggestions of movies we should cover. Thanks for listening. We're also doing more lives, so follow us also on the YouTube channel, and you can see our thopras, which are looking nice. And thanks for listening, guys.
Khandaan podcast for everyone.
Thank you for listening to Khandaan, a Bollywood podcast. You can find us on your preferred platform from iTunes to Spotify and beyond. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where we host our live streams from time to time, and our Instagram account for announcement and clips.